I'm really excited about this next speaker. I think he's going to bring a lot of juice to the crowd. Comes from outside of GE, but has worked with GE along with many, many Fortune 50 companies, 3M, Apple, American Express, Coca-Cola. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jeff DeGraff from the University of Michigan's Ross Business School.
I'm going to give you some principles about how to grow a business. And I'm going to tell you what we've learned by studying what kinds of practices work, not in some kind of airy-fairy way, but in the way that we've actually started looking at what are called market-to-book variances, or looking at stock prices. And what do we know about practices of innovation that lead to moving the stock price? How many like to move the stock price in the right direction? Now, I'm going to start with principle number one about innovation, and it's very simple. Innovation is not a thing. It's an attribute. I got a call in 1996 by the Office of Science and Technology in the White House. It was an interesting call. These are the people who give the challenge grants, the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, the Center for Disease Control, big money. And they said, here's the question, Jeff, how would we know an innovation if we saw one? Well, that's kind of an interesting question. And I said, you know, so you're looking for a functional definition? And they said, yeah. I said, as opposed to what? A dysfunctional definition for innovation? They said, no, we want to know what one would look like. And I said, well, that's simple. This guy up here gave us one in 1960. This is a man named Marshall McLuhan. If you've never heard of Marshall McLuhan, you all look a little young to me. If you've never heard of Marshall McLuhan, he was a famous University of Toronto professor in Canada. And he wrote a book in 1960 called Understanding Media. In the book, he describes the internet in great detail. It's scary. But of course, Schwab killed full-service brokerages. In the old days, 1980, I'd call the broker and I'd say, I want 1,000 shares of GE. And your broker would say, oh, that's a great choice. You can't go wrong with GE. That's going to be great. And he'd go to the back office guy who'd execute the trade, and we'd try and time the market. And it would cost me about $550 for that transaction, right? Well, when Schwab came along, remember, it's before the computer age, you actually call the guy in the back office, you get rid of the broker. And then eventually the computer age comes, you get rid of the guy who you're calling in the back office, and you execute the trade yourself. And within a 10-year period of time, trading per trade goes from about $555 to less than $50 in 10 years. So it's called disintermediation. You get rid of something. So an innovation has to kill something. If you haven't gotten rid of something, you don't have any room for what you're doing. Do you remember when Google came out, there was Yahoo and Lycos and Alta Vista? And they had a lot of money from venture capitalists, didn't they? They had money from Kleiner Perkins and Red Rock and Montgomery. And Google didn't have squat for money. And they were in a garage literally in Palo Alto, California, and they were a couple of stupid kids. Okay, they were pretty smart, but they weren't that smart. When I think of Google, most people say something like it was faster. It was more accurate. They corrected you. You know, don't you like it when you put something in and it says, did you mean blah, 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 dumbass, right? You know. You know. Yes, that is what I meant. And I am one. I'm sorry. But the reason Google was so successful, when we go back and look at this, is because it was easy to use and it was very simple. Your mom and dad could use it, right? 37 characters in a box, right? Nobody could write a graphic user interface, which is true at Google. So they made the little box. They were networking guys. The way innovation starts is somebody speculates the market, they run a bunch of experiments, and they try stuff. Then they figure out how to make money at it, and then they figure out how to build a community, and then they optimize. What's the problem if we start with the red and go to the green? Yeah. When you don't know where you're going, you always hedge. When you do, you optimize. If you optimize when you don't know where you're going, you can be accelerating your way to rack and ruin. Is this making sense? So the object is, if you're managing risk and you're trying to find the maximum upside of value or growth opportunity, you actually, like somebody trading on Wall Street or trading in Asia or trading in Europe, you have to actually start by diversifying your portfolio. In my little town of Ann Arbor, there used to be a company called Park Davis. Park Davis was a pharmaceutical company. They were trying to develop a medicine to reduce the blood pressure in the ventricles of the heart. And the medicine had gone through phase 1 FDA trials, which means what are called the toxicology phase. We didn't kill anybody. That's good. And then it got to phase 2. Now this is 15,000 people are in this trial, right? In phase 2, it's what's called the efficacy phase, which means, does this medicine really work? And it turns out that this medicine really did lower significantly the blood pressure in the ventricles of the heart. And there were no known side effects. None. No clinical known side effects of this medicine. Except they noticed something that seemed kind of odd. Over 90% of the women gave back their excess pills. And less than 10% of the men gave theirs back. Now, men, it turns out that we were kind of fibbing about this whole thing, and that there was a side effect that we didn't report. It was a noticeable side effect. At least I hope it was noticeable, right? That's part of the point, right? And they went back and figured out that this medicine gave men an erection, is what it did. And who knew? It was like, wow, gosh, that was like a big bonus, right? That would lower the blood pressure in the heart, and all of a sudden, you're stud monkey or whatever it is, right? I think it's going to be weird in 2 years. They've licensed this to Wrigley. It's a true story. Can you imagine in 2 years? Are you chewing gum? Is it blue gum? Oh, I'll go put on some jazz records or something, right? Whatever works for you, right? Well, our friends at Park Davis had the smarts to go back and reapply for the patent and go through the process again, which brought our friends from Warner Lambert into the process, which brought our friends at Pfizer into the process. And of course, the drug, which was a great accident, is called Viagra, and it's a nice $21 billion accident. And it nicely lays out what my main message is today, which is the difference between leading and leading innovation is simply this. Leading is about making what you want to have happen, happen. Leading is about making what you want to have happen, happen. Leading innovation is about building the bridge as you walk over it. It's about being mindful of what you didn't expect that emerged and capitalizing on it.